On the flight deck, listeners are manning up for the podcast launch. It's time for all unnecessary shows to clear the airwaves.
You're listening to the Hangar Bay, a podcast dedicated to the latest military flight simulation and hardware news. From developers to the community and everything in between, the Hangar Bay will get you squared away.
Welcome down to the Hangar Bay, your source for the latest news that every military flight simulation pilot can use. Today is Sunday, June 23rd, 2024. I'm your host, Jumanji, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Hangar Bay. I hope each and every one of you have had a wonderful week in the virtual skies, and we have an absolutely jam-packed week of news coming to you to cover today. There's the Flight Sim Expo taking place in Las Vegas right now, developer updates from all the usual suspects, and a few new ones this week, as well as the usual slate of great news from the community itself, folks just like you. There's just an absolute ton to get through, so without further ado, let's get started. If you're new to the show or a regular listener, just a reminder that you can always follow along with this week's show notes on the hangarbaypod.com or watch me scroll through them in the video version of the show, which will be hosted on YouTube or on Spotify. With that out of the way, let's start like we do each and every week with the flyby. Now, the flyby is where we aim to cover the highlights from this week's news in 60 seconds or less. Kicking things off, we've got IL-2 Gray Battle Series releasing update 5.204, which includes the new TA-152 collector plane. Sales are now live for both IL-2 Great Battles and the DCS series, so visit their respective stores if you're looking to pick up something new. The mega patch for DCS, or at least that's what I'm calling it, that was originally expected for the end of June has now been delayed 1 week to July, so no Chinook or Afghanistan next week. You're going to be waiting 1 more week. Combat Air Patrol 2, a title that was released back in 2016, has been revived from the dead by Micropose. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. And on the hardware side, tons of news this week. The force feedback revolution is upon us, with announcements on new hardware supporting force feedback technology from not 1, not 2, but 3 different manufacturers. And then finally, on that hardware news, Flight Sim Expo 2024, where a lot of that news has been featured, has also been going on this weekend with presentations and announcements from the likes of Winwing, Virpil, Combat Pilot, Scramble Battle Britain, and a host of other companies. And we'll have all of that for you later in the show. So that was just a few of the big stories for the week. Stick around for the full show. We're going to cover each of these in more detail, as well as the rest of this week's news. On that note, let's dig in and get things started with the developers.
Hey everyone, Wags here.
In the developer news segment, we bring you the latest happenings from game developers and related third parties. Starting things off, we've got some updates from Microprose and their B-17 series. So B-17 Flying Fortress, the Mighty 8th Redux, which is a reimagining, putting a fresh coat of paint on this old title. They're back this week with developer and blog number 7. So this is, I believe, the first real significant developer update we've had since this title went live into early access on Steam a few months ago. I know once it shipped out the door, it really wasn't a tremendous amount of leap from the original game that I think a lot of us were hoping to see in terms of revisions to this old classic. But the new developer and blog walks us through what they've been working on since that released on Steam a while back. So I got the direct link in the show notes. But the biggest thing is they've been talking about the improved skin meshes and jammage system that they're working on, improvements to performance due to the model upgrades. They've been spending a lot of time working on the assets in-game, and they're showing off some of the benefits from that. And I've got the video going right now on the video version of the show here in the show notes. They've also got some new updated textures they've been working on, and they did hint that they're going to include some livery support. So what they're going to hopefully add in is the ability for you, if you switch squadrons, each squadron will have their unique coat of paint, or you can select which one you want it to be. Either way, if you're a fan of this series or you picked it up already and you're interested in what changes they have, I encourage you to check out the in-game footage. There's not so much on the written word side of the house on the development update, but I think there'll be a lot to dig into with the video, so you can check out what they've got featured for you. So that's, again, updated development diary for the Mighty 8th Redux. Sticking on the Microprose and B-17 front, we've got an update on the Mighty 8th VR title. So this is the new game in development from Microprose. This is development blog number 2. It has been almost 6 months since we last heard from them. I think the first developer blog was on the very first episode of this show. So you got to cast your mind all the way back to January. where we first talked about this title. So for those of you who don't recall or may not know, this is a VR only title, putting you in the B-17 for you to fly those missions over Europe for the Allies. This video footage is actually really, really cool. So they've got almost 17 minutes of pure gameplay footage to enjoy here. So lots to take away from this series. And I highly encourage you to check out the video if you're all interested in what they've got. So they're essentially walking you through starting at coming out of the briefing room, getting in a Jeep, driving off the aircraft, which we saw something similar on their very first developer blog, but they now then show what it's going to be like once you're completely pre-flighting the aircraft, settling into the actual aircraft itself, getting into some of the gunner positions, you know, whatever the case may be. And in fact, they walk you through multiple gunner positions, the pilot and bombardier roles. They show off the ability to walk inside the aircraft, and we're taking a look at that right now in the video. All of this footage, as they note, is captured on a Steam PC VR build with an Oculus 2 headset that's connected via Wi-Fi using the virtual desktop. They've also tested using hand tracking on the Quest 2. They say that's partially functional. They're hoping to improve that functionality as they move forward. They said the game also works on via the Steam app with Oculus AirLink and motion controllers, and the team is aiming to support as many headsets as possible at launch. I am not a VR owner. It's something I've been keeping an eye on, and this is one of those titles that might eventually get me pushed in that direction. I mean, obviously applicable for DCS and IL2 and BMS. Those are all areas which you could use it as well, but seeing some other titles like this, especially VR-only ones, might be that little push I need. So we'll see. Anyway, if you happen to own VR or you're all interested in this title, be sure to check it out. You can find the direct link in the show notes. Again, that's the Mighty 8th VR Dev Blog number 2. You can find it on Steam. All right, keeping things on the World War II side of the house, let's shift over to the IL-2 Great Battles series. And as I mentioned up front, they have released update 5.204. We've covered that in detail on the show before. So again, the major features are the introduction of that TA-152 collector plane. If you are interested in picking it up, it's 15% off right now until July 2nd. So you've got about a week to go on that front. The other major changes were the introduction of some new career modes if you like to fly on the German side of the house there. And then also, my favorite, the increase of the maximum amount of buttons and access on a controller from 64 to 128. So if you own like a Winwing or a Virpil throttle, you don't need to worry about splitting your device anymore to capture all the inputs. So they've also got a nice little video. They released one walking you through the new collector plane. The team over there always puts together really nice trailers, so we can see that one in action and what it's capable of. And then also, if you're interested in learning a little bit more, I think I'm going to talk about this later in the community show, but just an early heads up, Enigma already gave a nice impression, or sorry, Enigma. I meant to say Shamrock. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Shamrock over at the Stormbirds blog, who's actually at the Flight Sim conference right now, so shout out to you, Shamrock. He put together a really nice early first impressions of this aircraft, so you can kind of see what he thought of. Is this something you might be interested in picking up? So I encourage you to go over to his website, stormbirds.blog, and see what he had to say. He's always got some really good insights into what aircraft feel like in IL-2. So that's IL-2 Great Battles Update 5.204 now live. Also on the IL-2 front, this is kind of a little cool addition. They updated, or I should say they added, a museum to the official website. So this is a new listing that you can find right now if you go to il2sturmovik.com/museum. They've added all the historical information about the aircraft and ground vehicles that are currently modeled in IL-2 Great Battle series. So you can find a detailed history of each aircraft or vehicle in the game, as well as imagery and detailed specifications. That's probably the part I found most interesting. So you've got performance numbers on everything from stall speeds and climb rates to landing speeds. You can find a detailed armament capabilities list, or just general features and recommended operating conditions for the aircraft. So here in the video, I'm looking at a picture of the Mosquitoes page, what it looks like and what some of its characteristics are, and then also a zoomed out view of what the website will look like and how you can pick between individual aircraft. So if you're someone that maybe had your notes in a different place, or you always found yourself wanting to learn a little bit more about some of the aircraft, you know, what speed do I land at? What's my best climb speed? Whatever the case may be, this could be a very helpful tool for you, and it's a great addition. I'd like to see more developers do something like that. Very, very cool. So that's on the il2sturmovik.com website. All right, and then finally on the World War II side of the house, our good friend John Coughlin, lead developer for Slytherin's upcoming Scramble Battle of Britain was at the Flight Sim Expo 2024, and he presented Scramble BOB and showcased a live demo of the game in action on the show stage. So you probably heard me talk about it already, and I'm going to continue to talk about it. I think it's a very, very cool game, and I'm really anxious to see how it continues to develop. But if you haven't downloaded the demo off Steam already, which you can do, go check it out on Steam and download it. I encourage you to come check out this video. I clipped the presentation from the full Flight Sim Expo 2024 presentation and put it on my YouTube page. That's youtube.com/StuManji. You can find it there. It's about 10-15 minute presentation. John and company do a great job walking you through what a typical game mode looks like, or what a typical dogfight looks like. Again, this is a tactical dogfighting game. It's probably an extreme oversimplification, but I always kind of think think XCOM meets dogfighting. You have time to analyze your turn, figure out what you want to do, whatever the case may be. So you can always follow the team over on the Slytherin website. You can follow John on at Click2Zoom on Twitter, or just go over and check out the video on the YouTube page and see what this game has in store. It was a really, really fun presentation. It was great to see John there promoting it. And I'll talk about this more as the show goes along. The Flight Sim Expo 2024 this year was just a fantastic show, a celebration of the hobby. It was great to see so many, or I should say, a significant increase on the military flight sim side of the house, and we'll talk a lot about that more in the hardware section. But man, I really hope that's something the community leans into as we go forward. In fact, I actually did my first ever live stream. I don't ever do that, especially on the gameplay front. So there is a video on my YouTube page as well of me doing like a 3.5 hour live stream where I'm just reacting to the show. Shout out to Sedlow, friend of the show, who joined me for a little while, and he and I chatted. A couple other folks jumped in as well, left some comments. I apologize. The first 20 minutes, the audio is terrible, so just get past that. Start about the 30-minute mark. Have a good time if you want a full recap. Otherwise, like I said, I've clipped specific videos I think might be of interest to you for the military flight sim side of the house as well. So you can check that out. And sorry, I'm ranting, getting away from the main topic at hand, which is Scramble Battle of Britain. So sorry about that tangent. But again, shout out to all the folks that attended Flight Sim Expo. It was great. And be sure to check out Scramble Battle of Britain. Also on the Flight Sim Expo 2024 front, we had Combat Pilot. That's right, our second major software developer from the military flight sim side of the house. So this was Jason Williams and team. So formerly on the IL2 team, now he's the lead developer of Combat Pilot. He was there with Carlos Flores, the CEO of Barbed Wire, and they put together a nice little presentation on the development history of Combat Pilot, as well as what their future plans are. So for those of you who aren't aware, this is the in-development World War II Pacific Theater flight sim. I mean, man, it's been way too long since we've been able to do carrier ops in World War II, right? So cannot wait for this game. The team's only about 12 months into the development cycle and likely has several years to go, but they talked about, where they've been and what their new plans are. So their current year 2 plans are to expand the budget and the team size, which is promising. Sounds like they're on the right path. They're working on the basics, right? AI, damage model, weaponry, visual effects. They did talk about they're going to start working in multiplayer and VR support right now, so that's great. And then fleshing out the GUI and the launcher. They did mention something that they hopefully plan for early alpha beta testing. I don't know if that's achievable by year 2 necessarily, and I don't know what their full timeline is, but that was promising to me. Perhaps we're going to be getting this in the 2 to 3, our hands on it initially in the 2 to 3 year time frame rather than like 4 to 5, but who knows. And then they mentioned what their plans are after year 2 and beyond. They said they plan to release the franchise of Combat Pilot in phases. So to me, that comes across like they're looking for a very IL2 Great Battles model of purchasing, right? So you maybe release something like Battle of Stalingrad. It's got a set number of planes and one map. And then maybe the next edition, right, like Battle of Normandy. I know that's not in the right time order, but that adds a new theater with new planes. I think that seems to be the model they're hinting at here. So the very first game released will be a mini theater built around Midway. And then they said the first large-scale theater they want to introduce once Midway is complete, so think like phase 2 of the game, is going to be based in the Solomon Islands. So for those who aren't familiar, think Guadalcanal, Coral Sea, New Guinea, that area of the world. So lots of rich history to explore there in terms of the franchise, and that's kind of where they want to start. So very, very exciting news coming out of the Combat Pilot team. And they did include early alpha footage of Combat Pilot in action. So I know we'll probably be reporting more as the weeks goes on from folks who were able to get hands-on with the demo at the Flight Sim Expo. But I did want to include that video in the show notes as well. So again, you can find that on my YouTube page as well. I have a clip of the whole presentation from Jason and Carlos. And then I also have the live demo itself at the end of it. So I think if you jump like the 8-minute mark, 9-minute mark, you'll see some of that live footage there showcasing where they're at currently with Combat Pilot. The engine looks really, really nice. And we've seen that a lot from the screenshots. But for only 12 months in, I thought it was pretty impressive. So again, you can learn more about Combat Pilot on their website, their YouTube page. You can find all the links for that in the show notes. And then also check out their development diaries. Jason's doing those every couple weeks, maybe a month or so. I think they got about 6 or 7 of those, and they've been really fun to catch up on, and that's something you want to stay subscribed to as development continues. Okay, so that wraps up things on the World War II side of the house. I warn you, we're still not even halfway through developer news. It's a chunky show today, ladies and gentlemen. All right, talking about one side tangent, so not really developer news, but I did mention there are summer sales going on. So you can get sales right now for both DCS and IL-2 Great Battle Series. So if you check out both of their official stores, you can find the sales going on right now. Some highlights for me that I pulled out, which are kind of promising. On the DCS front, DCS South Atlantic is now $35. I think that's a new low. I don't remember it being 50% off up to this point, but that is available for $35 US, and that's maybe a good time to get in. There's going to be a pretty significant patch update to that one in July when that patch drops. That's part of that mega update I was talking about. You can also get the DCS F-14 Tomcat for $48. That's from Heatblur. That's 40% off, which I believe is a new low. And then finally, the last one I pulled out was the DCS Mi-24 Hind. That is now 50% off, I believe a new low for $35 US. So I'm really thinking about pulling the trigger on that Hind. I haven't done it at this point. You would think the inner Hilo Bubba and me, I got to own them all. And I probably will, but maybe this is the final push I need. I definitely think I'm going to get the South Atlantic map, though. With that update coming, it looks really, really promising. Between that and Cola, I can get my green map fix. On the IL-2 front, Great Battle Series, the highlights for me on their sale is the 2 most recent campaigns have now reached new lows. So Sky Nomads, which is for the Yak 7B, and IL-2 Overlord campaign, which is for the P-51, they are both 75% off and 50% off respectively. So new lows for both of those. I mean, it's kind of incredible how cheap you can pick up some of these IL-2 campaigns for. So if you like more of that scripted narrative, go check those out. It's $5 and $2.50 US respectively. And then I did want to highlight the Battle of Normandy edition. That's the latest edition of the IL-2 franchise, and it's the one I kind of enjoy flying the most so far. The premium edition is now down to a new low. That includes the collector planes. That's $36. And the standard edition, if you don't care about the collector planes, is just $24. That's 60% off. And then I failed to mention it earlier, but it goes without saying, new sales means new videos, especially in the DCS front. They've got another great trailer that you can enjoy. Man, I'm telling you, their trailer game never fails to impress. So, okay. So that's it. DCS IL-2 summer sales. Go ahead and pick yourself up if you're looking for something new. Moving on to the DCS front exclusively, we've got the newsletter for 21st of June. As I mentioned, the lead story in that was the sad delay of the quote-unquote mega patch. We will not be getting the Chinook or Afghanistan until the 3rd of July, 2024, so we're delayed 1 week. And then the other big news was that the Sinai update will not make the July patch window. I'm extremely disappointed about this. I know the team at OnReTech is doing some great things, but man, it just feels like the wait continues, right? So over a year now, hopefully it will be something to look forward to at the end of July, early August. I'm sure the wait will be worth it. It's just, man, I'm ready to see that map get some little TLC. So Afghanistan, CH-47, we've got the COLA updates. We've got the South Atlantic updates. I'm sure that we'll have updates for both the F4E and the Kiowa, but no Sinai update. So it'll still be a really, really huge update when it does drop in July. Okay, on the CH-47 development front, probably the most significant news for those of you looking forward to the release of the Hook is they did come out with the early access and after early access launch features. So One news point they had in the newsletter that said is much of the remaining work they're finishing up at this time focuses on the cargo carrying functions, the damage model, the flight control systems, and the avionics. We're also working on the countermeasure system and the door gunner. So that does sound like a lot. So you might be asking like, well, what am I actually getting when this releases? So at early access, we will have the ability to load and unload cargo from the internal bay based on weight and volume. There will be single point sling loading, basic trim system, a fully interactive VR ready cockpit. So that's good. It sounds like VR will be pretty strong out the gate for this if that's your thing. There will be AI side gunners equipped with the M60 to start. And there will be an integrated AR-186 radio with voice chat. I don't know how many people actually are using the voice chat built in the game, but if you like that, you'll have that as well. That essentially kind of wraps up the early access launch features. A lot of the juicy stuff with this particular aircraft are going to be coming after early access. So your automated flight control system, trim system, and force trim will be after early access. That one shocked me a little bit. I'm pretty surprised force trim's after early access, but multi-crew will be after early access. The flight engineer functionality will be after early access. There will be a gunner on the ramp. I don't know if that's user playable, but that would be wicked if that's true. That's after early access. Different machine gun models, night vision goggles. Yep, that's right. No NVGs at release. Also kind of interesting. No heads-up display system at launch. That'll come after early access. The multi-point sling loading, the fire extinguishers, the extended range fuel system, the autopilot hold modes, the training missions, additional missions, and the full manual. That all comes after early access. So if this is an aircraft you really want, like I do, it's probably worth you picking it up now, right, to secure that pre-order discount, get yourself an extra 10% off. So what is that, like $5, $4? I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe a little bit more than that. But I'll be honest, even though I'm probably going to pick it up, if you're not one who wants to jump in right away, given the amount of content that they've got coming after early access, I'd probably hold off. So I was hoping for a little bit more at launch, but hey, it'll be nice to have it. And you could probably still, if you're going to be like me, I just want to kind of fly it around and just enjoy the weight of the helicopter. So that'll be enough for me at launch, but hopefully it won't be too long before we see those additional features come to the aircraft. Staying on the helicopter side of the house with DCS, one other feature they did have in this newsletter was the announcement of the AH-64 campaign called The Four Horsemen by Fights On Simulations. So this is a new announcement to me and a very exciting addition coming to the game, especially for those of you, if you're like me, like to fly the Apache. This will be a 12-mission campaign on the Syria map, serving as a member of the British Army Air Force's 664 Squadron. So all the missions in this campaign are going to be based on Operation Shader, which is the UK's ongoing military intervention against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or ISIL. If you want to know a little bit more, go ahead and check out the YouTube page for Fights On. You can find it on YouTube at Florence with a C 4764, or just hit up the show notes. I got the video for you right here. You can see a nice little preview of some of the action you can get up to in the campaign. And look at all the great content you'll be coming our way. You can also follow him on Instagram at Fights On Sims, or join the Discord where you're allowed to try Mission 1. I'm looking forward to doing that myself. I got caught up with the Flight Sim Expo this weekend, but I'm really looking forward to checking out what this campaign's got coming our way. So always good to see more content coming to DCS. Speaking of content in DCS, Polychop posted a June 2024 update for their aircraft. So if you picked up the Kiowa and you're interested on what fixes you might have coming your way or what the roadmap looks like now that the development's released, I always encourage you to be a member of their Discord. Find that in the show notes. But if you haven't checked it out yet, they do comment that they, in the next few months, are continuing to work on any immediate fixes based on user experience and bug reports. Based on the initial feedback they've received, the prioritizing the damage model, especially ground collision and structural damage. They're prioritizing fixes to the flight model. They're prioritizing fixes to multi-crew experience and synchronizations, and then your general performance improvements. They also mentioned that they're going to make the AI pilot feel more alive, add more inputs to help control the AI pilot, and then flesh out some animations to make it possible for the player to remove the pilot display unit, things of that nature. So again, find them, Polychop, on their Discord and track updates over there. Obviously, I'll keep them coming to you on the show, but you'll get them a little bit quicker if you're already subscribed in the Discord. So, and then finally, and probably until this resolves itself, I'm not going to continue talking about it a whole lot because there's really not a whole lot to say. But I am a huge fan of communication from the developers, so I did want to include this piece of news from DCS, from Eagle Dynamics specifically. The community team provided a consolidated Eagle Dynamics RASBAM situation, information, and discussion post on the Eagle Dynamics forums. So, based on what we've covered already on the show, there's not going to be really any new information, or at least none. I don't feel like there's any new information. But this is a nice thread that provides a concise recap of all the events with links to all the various official communications from both parties. And then at the end, the team actually answers some specific questions. This is something I kind of wish they'd done weeks ago. You know, I mean, this all started early April, and here we are 3 months later. And I understand they probably had to go through some legal hoops to jump through, if you will, about what can we say, what can we not say, and that's all fair. But this is the kind of communication, the distillation of information that I think really benefits when developers are this clear and open, and as much as they can be, I suppose. So again, the two areas I really feel like are worth highlighting are the refunds. Again, if you want a refund for the F15E for DCS, you can do it, submit a support ticket. It's going to be about 7 to 10 days, and that's only for if you purchased it from the official store. Steam, that's up to Steam. It's kind of on your own. And then they do answer, like, why do we keep selling the F15E, which they confirmed is based on legal advice. That's why it's still available in the store. And then at the end, they make an apology. They say, on behalf of all of us at Eagle Dynamics, we can't tell you again how sorry we are that you're being made in part by us to go through this. We're committed to getting this sorted out as soon as we can. That's great to hear. And again, I want to give props to ED for this level of communication. If you want to see this full post, it's over on the Eagle Dynamics forums, which I got the link to. Again, transparency is the key, so props to them. And then this is probably the last time we really talk about it until we have an official update, which hopefully will be a resolution where RASBAM's getting back to work on the modules, and they're getting the money that they're owed, and then all is well, right? So, okay, on to bigger and brighter things, talking about a few different games now. So we kind of rolled through the usual suspects. Now we have Nuclear Option, who's back this week. So again, Nuclear Option, if you don't remember, is more of a flight sim, military light flight sim. It's available for just $18 on Steam. They're back with update 0.28, which adds a multi-role fighter this week, which is like, think very, 5th gen Su-57 type thing. So kind of more on the modern side. They added a Hyperion class fleet carrier. It's got a forward ramp, so think more of the modern British aircraft carrier. So that's always good to see new naval assets. They added a new economy system and a UI, which allows players and factions to purchase and reserve aircraft and stockpile weaponry. They included air traffic control messages for takeoffs and landings. And the coolest feature I thought was they've added destructible city buildings on top of a host of whole new missions and bug fixes and whatnot. Check out the full developer log on Steam. But if you like Nuclear Option, there's some new content this week to play with, which is great to see. This is just such a nice palette cleanser. You know, sometimes I'm not in the mood for DCS or more high fidelity sim. So Nuclear Option is really, really enjoyable if you haven't checked it out already. Follow them on Discord, Twitter, YouTube. They're Shockfront Studios. It's a great developer over there. I'm working on Nuclear Option. Okay, something a little bit different now. We've got Combat Air Patrol 2, which is back from the grave. So I was actually not aware of this title. Maybe it's, you know, it just was off my radar entirely. But Combat Air Patrol 2, which was a title originally based on the AV-8B Harrier, was released back in 2016. And at the time, going back to watch some of the initial videos of it on YouTube, the promise of it looked pretty high. And then it just, for whatever reason, just kind of seemed to atrophy and then turned into vaporware. Well, Microprose busted out the paddles and brought that sucker back to life. And now the title is officially back in early access with a full trailer of the developer put out by Microprose on their YouTube page. So yeah, this is going to be kind of an interesting thing to follow. As we just got done talking about with Nuclear Option, Combat Air Patrol 2 is kind of advertised as, you know, being that middle ground flight simulator, maybe a little bit more realistic than what Nuclear Option is going for. They're going for a semi-realistic flight model, military simulation, but they don't want you to have that overhead of the big, huge 300-page manual. I guess it could be 300 pounds too. You never know. So again, the primary aircraft is the Harrier, but you can also fly the V-22, the SH-60, shout out SH-60, a 400 transport, or a KC-767 tanker. So a couple different aircraft. And then interestingly, there's a couple of ground vehicles you can control: the M1 Abrams, M2 Bradley, the T-90, and the BTR-80. Now there's a whole slew of features, which they're teasing here. They plan for a full fidelity cockpit. So like you see a switch in the cockpit, you're gonna be able to flick it. They got quick start training and single missions coming our way. Interestingly, they promise a fully dynamic campaign on the Gulf map, 4 maps in total. So we got the Gulf or Straits of Hormuz. There'd be Yuma, Arizona, like training ground. Conway Bay in Hawaii, another training ground, and then the Western UK or Wales will be a third training ground. So I guess you can kind of think you'll do all these training ground missions and then go deploy operationally the Gulf. There'll be full HOTAS support and then track IR and VR support. So I believe this is a single developer, but maybe if they're getting support from micropros, there are going to be more developers coming online. So you can check this out over on Steam. It's available for $30 right now. And then I highly recommend you check out a video from Damson. So Damson's a great follow. It's at DAMSONN. I believe his Twitter handle is Damson was taken. He's got a good video up on it, which I've got for you here on the show notes. And he's actually walking through what you can expect from this particular title. Some of the notes I wrote down from him was, it looks like the new version he mentions has a new GUI and an improved flight model, which we're looking at right now in the video version of the show. He did say that the flight model was a little wonky, maybe needs some improvements, and there's got to be some rough edges that still need to be worked out, which is probably expected for a title that's, been on life support for a couple years now. But one interesting thing I noted that he said, he goes, I kind of wished that the game would just have focused on one thing and kind of gotten that working before it promises all these other features. Hopefully it's not biting off more than it can chew. But that said, with MicroPro support, hopefully we see a lot of those things start to come alive. So again, that's Combat Air Patrol 2, available on Steam right now. Check out videos of the trailer in action. Check out the content from Damson, and let me know what you think if you decide to pick it up. I'm sure I'll be talking about more on the show in the weeks to come. And then finally, something completely different. So on a show based on military flight simulations, I suppose this is a little bit of a reach, but we have a title coming called Cleared Hot. If you are someone like me who in the 90s got invested in the Strike series, so think Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Soviet Strike, Nuclear Strike, all of these were developed by Electronic Arts for the PC and the console. This game is going to be right up your alley. So I believe this is being developed by Seafinger Games. I hope I said that right. And this game is all about tapping into that nostalgia, okay? And it even says that in the game description. It is, quote, a nostalgic helicopter shooter game with satisfying physics and light tactical elements. Shoot, dodge, move your squad around the battlefield, pick up almost anything with your rope and magnet, and you're on your way. So again, you got to go check out this trailer. The audio, I mean, it leans into campy a little bit, but it was perfect. Like if you like that Strike series, it's exactly what it has been missing from the genre for a long time. So I think it looks really, really fun. It's got a full single player campaign coming our way, the option to buy and upgrade different kinds of helicopters, customize your loadout. It's going to have 3 different biomes, so desert, jungle, and Arctic with day and night missions. And they even show off the FLIR in action, which I thought was kind of cool. And then, obviously the wider range of physics at play here. So you can find that over on the Steam page, Cleared Hot. And then I've also got a bunch of, in addition to the video that I linked, a bunch of GIFs that walk you through a little bit of that action going on. So that's completely different. Again, it's called Cleared Hot, but man, oh man, does it look fun. Whew. I think that was the longest developer notes we've ever had. So hardware is probably going to try to be just as competitive, but hopefully you're still with me. Let's shift over now as we've wrapped up things on the developer news and see what the hardware folks have to say.
Flight controls. Flight controls.
If you can move it, toggle it, push it, or rotate it, hardware news is where we're going to talk about it. And kicking things off this week, we have the first entrance into the force feedback revolution. We got Moza, M-O-Z-A. Am I saying that right? Moza? So evidently these folks are an established name in the sim racing community, and they are now making their official entrance into the flight sim market, and they're looking to make a pretty major splash from what they've unveiled so far. So they're not just unveiling a force feedback base, which is probably the biggest piece of news, but they're also hoping to they're also planning to unveil a new Winwing inspired grip. It looks very Winwingy. So is that a thing, Winwingy? And in fact, I'm going to put the pictures up here in the video version of the show right now. They're also unveiling a throttle grip, a throttle base, and then takeoff and landing paddle a la Winwing, and then finally rudder pedals. So they've got it all. And to say they have liberally copied, I don't want to say copied, but yeah, we'll go copied. The designs of the Winwing stick and the Winwing F18 throttle handle, which admittedly, I mean, F18 throttle handle is just the handle, right? It's hard to really accuse someone of copying it. But that takeoff and landing panel looks pretty similar. And then the rudder pedals look pretty similar to, I think, the Virpil lineup. But either way, I think the biggest news is the force feedback base. So yes, force feedback hardware is coming our way. They do mention that this base will support third-party flight sticks and appears initially to be compatible with the Virpil Thrustmaster style at the moment. I don't have any confirmation of that beyond just one video I've seen where someone used a Thrustmaster F18 grip on this base. So we'll see more later. They did state they have a, quote, commitment to an open and inclusive ecosystem. So take that for what you will. And then the grip is what's interesting. Like I said, it looks almost exactly like the Winwing F18 EX grip. Or sorry, F16 EX grip. I think I've said F18 a while, but so F16 EX joystick grip even with that little detachable left expansion model. The weird thing about it though is instead of a extra mini axis on the bottom, they've got a toggle switch there. You have to see the pictures to understand what I'm saying. I've never seen a toggle switch on the grip of a joystick before, so that's a new feature. Moving over to the throttle, though, you got your typical F18 throttle grip here. What I really like is the little panel to the left of it. I don't know if I can open that. Yeah, there we go. So I expanded that on the show notes here in the video. You can see they've actually put together something that's really nice. It's got your typical engine equipment, even got the crank left to right switch, the APU, all your FLIR, your targeting pod, switches, your radar switches, your INS switches. That actually looks really, really nice. Even the rudder trim and the reset. So I like what they put together there. So that's pretty cool. And then the takeoff panel, I don't know if you can see that too well. They've got a hook. They got a gear. I've heard rumor that you can maybe switch that hook to a flap, but I don't know if that's true or not. They got the parking brake and the selective jettison switch. So all in all, you're actually getting quite a bit on the throttle. So I didn't see any news about that being force feedback though. That's only on the joystick base. So. And then I didn't catch much in the way of rudder pedal news, but they do look nice. Not sure about it. It does appear they have a damper on them, so that'll be one to keep our eyes on. So from what I read, folks had a lot of good things to say about Moza on the sim racing side of the house. So it looks like they'll be ready and poised to kind of really push some innovation in the military flight sim side of the house as well. So welcome to them. And then again, credit to Shamrock of the Stormlords blog, who supplied a few of these pictures from the show floor at the Flight Sim Expo. Thank you so much, Shamrock. Be sure to go over to his blog. He's got live updates from each day of the show, and he's got some really, really cool recaps if you want to see more of what he saw over there. Okay, continuing on the force feedback train, we've got an entrance from a new hardware manufacturer that I wasn't aware of before the show, and that's flightsim.com. I really encourage you, by the way, to check out the video, the presentation. Their founder, Fabian Lim, did a tremendous presentation of the hardware that they have lined up for us. Really hilarious. Quite a good speaker there. But anyway, FlightSim.com is presenting a new hardware lineup. They did talk about a force feedback yoke. So if you're interested in the general aviation side, that's probably of interest to you. What stood out to me was they have a force feedback base. It says it's going to be available in Q4 2024. And they did tease a grip, but no idea on price and no idea what that grip will really look like. These are all just kind of mock-ups at the moment. And by the way, that applies for all the force feedback stuff we're going to talk about today. No pricing as of right now. I know everybody's like, what's the price? What's the price? We don't know yet. So we're just going to have to be patient and wait for a few more updates. That said, the winner from Flight Sim in my mind was the force feedback rudder. So this looks really, really cool. Can't wait to hear more about that. And my favorite is, quote, competitively priced. So maybe only one kidney instead of two. I think that's what Fabian joked about in his presentation. This is also available in Q4 2024, so probably won't be too long before we get more details to follow. Again, as the name implies, you can follow them on flightsim.com. Got links to all their various websites and store pages, and the video from the Flight Sim Expo 2024 presentation in the show notes. Continuing on with Flight Sim 2024, Flight Sim Expo 2024 news, we've got Winwing. So this is the one that most people seem to be interested in, and Winwing didn't disappoint. man, they came out of the gun gate firing. Tony, formerly of the HOTAS Discord as a representative from Winwing, who is now the product design consultant for Winwing, had a great presentation where he walked through a multitude of hardware announcements, especially a lot of stuff on the general aviation side of the house. So if you like to fly Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane, whatever other civilian flight sim there are out there, sorry, I do not know them all. In addition to DCS or military flight simulation stuff, then this will be a very significant interest to you. They've got a whole slew of gear coming from the Boeing 737 and the Airbus 321 product lines. The one I thought that stood out to me the most, though, was the 737 or 320 CDU. So this is going to be a perfect drop-in for something like the CH-47, definitely the upcoming C-130 module, which is in development. But then also, why couldn't this work for your A10 CDU? Why couldn't this work for your Apache CDU? So they've got a great screen in addition to all the buttons. They've got a nice little display, and they're hinting at full video on there. So I'm hoping to get a report from someone who's on the show floor that somebody asked Winwing, hey, is this just going to be like your normal export like you would with your MFD screens, with your F-18, F-16 ICPs, or upfront controllers? Because if that's the case, if this is just a little monitor on top of the panel, then heck yeah, this is a must pick up. But okay, that's all the general aviation stuff. What we're really here to talk about is military stuff, right? So the two updates from Winwing on the military side of the house were, one, version 2.0 of their F-18 joystick. So if you liked their F-18 stick, and why wouldn't you? It's a great one. I really enjoyed it. It's probably it might be my favorite grip that I own from a purely tactile point of view. I love the switches on this grip. Well, version 2.0 is going to have their that inner vibration tool that they have. It's going to have the vibration that's present in the F-16 EX grip, and I believe also in the F-15 EX throttle grip. I don't use that haptic motor that's inside of it. I don't like it in my stick, but if you're someone who wants it, great. It's going to be available in version 2. That said, they did not tell us when it's coming or what the cost would be. The other update, though, and the one that everybody probably wants to know about, is yes, Winwing is developing a force feedback joystick base called the Cyber Taurus. I've got a video of it in action from the show floor over at the Flight Sim Expo, and let me tell you, it's chunky. So I am fortunate enough to own the VP Force Rhino force feedback base. It is also quite chunky, but this one is definitely not shying away from that. In fact, it's quite a bit deeper. That's what I would say. It looks like almost as tall. It's hard to know without seeing it in person, but it's very deep. So it's going to be a pretty significant adjustment to your flight sim rig. I don't know if this is going to be something you can feasibly want to mount to a desk mount, and without knowing how heavy it is. So a lot of these force feedback bases are going to be pretty chunky and might require a lot of us to make adaptations to our Simpits. Or if you don't have a Simpit, might cause you to start looking into one if you want some of this higher end force feedback gear that's coming our way. Again, as I mentioned, with a bunch of these presentations, I clipped the presentation from Tony and Winwing, also on the YouTube page. Tons of people have left me comments about their thoughts, so I encourage you to go join the conversation over there. Again, youtube.com/StuManji. All right, shifting things over now to the eye tracker portion of the Flight Simulation Expo, and Tobii was there. So Tobii, if you're not aware, Tobii Gaming has the Tobii Eye Tracker 5. The big selling point here is this provides you head and eye tracking, like a la Track IR or some of the other, or Open Track, but without the need to wear something on your head. So if you just want to hop in front of your desk and let the camera do all the work for you and just sense where you are and watch your head and where you turn it, Tobii could be exactly what you want to have. The big thing the team was teasing, though, was their newest feature called Camera Boost, which I did include a video from Obsidian Ant on YouTube. He got access to this a while ago and talked about how it performs in Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, what improvements it makes. The idea here is they've added some algorithm improvements such that your head movement gets an additional boost. So let's say the biggest problem in head tracking right now, right, is you want to look all the way behind you. Well, how do you look all the way behind you and set up your curve just right so that when you look about 45 degrees to the left, your head's fully looking behind you in game, right? That's the biggest problem a lot of people have, is dialing in those curves of head tracking. Now, once you get it set up, it's pretty good to go. But if you're someone new, or you got to reformat your computer and you lose it, doing that all over again sucks, right? So that's what the idea behind Camera Boost is to kind of take a lot of that guesswork out of the equation. And it basically can detect where your eyes are looking and the rate of your head movement, and then it'll boost the signal, if you will. So the further and further you get away, the more and more it's amplifying the signal, so you don't have to turn that far to see behind you. So if you are someone that owns Tobii Eye Tracker, this feature is already available right now in DCS, in Star Citizen, and in War Thunder. It's in development for Elite Dangerous, Arma, and X-Plane. I don't really know why it's got to be in development or not available across all games, but so if you are someone who owns Tobii Eye Tracker, maybe you can let me know. Either way, this is one to keep an eye out for, especially I was curious about functionality with IL-2 and Falcon BMS specifically. So if you're someone who knows about that, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to update folks on the show about the status of that, but it is available again for DCS and War Thunder right now. The full presentation from Thomas of Tobii Eye Tracker also on my YouTube page. Again, about a 10 to 15 minute presentation. So very, very, very interesting what they've built over there. All right, shifting over to Virpil now. Yeah, that's right. Virpil was also at the Flight Sim Expo 2024, and man, they didn't disappoint. Quite a few new products coming our way. Unfortunately, Virpil did not host an announcement, so they were just on the show floor, but they came with a bunch of new gear, and they didn't disappoint. So thanks again to Shamrock of Stormlord's blog and D Drake of 1984 of the HOTAS Discord and the HOTAS subreddit. They both provided a ton of cool pictures here. So what we're looking at right now in the video version is the new left and right cadet series. They're calling them the Aero grips. So not only is there a new left and right grip, there's also a new base, which is going to be coming out, maybe possibly placing the Warbird. It looks like this is more of a desktop oriented base, very low profile. And very interestingly, on the base, they also have like a little axis lever just to the left of the base. I don't know if that's intended to be a fully functioning throttle. So if you only wanted this base and stick, you kind of have a little throttle axis there, which is kind of cool. But it's one to keep our eye on. We don't know anything more at this time beyond the fact that it's an addition to their cadet series. So no pricing information, no release date. But there are a significant number of inputs on here. This is very reminiscent almost of the Constellation grip, if you're familiar with that. So check out the pictures in the show notes. Looks really promising. What else are we seeing? Well, there is an addition on the more premium side of the house, which I believe is going to be called fall under their Max line. I don't know. Some of these names haven't been fully fleshed out yet, but it very much looks like Virpil's trying to lead into like defining specific product levels in the company. So like a high end, maybe a mid tier and a low end. This grip that they tease is very reminiscent of a grip you'd see on the SU-57. So 2 hat switches, 2 buttons, a axis where your right thumb would be up on the top of the grip, and then where your thumb would rest is just a single button rather than a hat switch. Although there are screws on the front of this grip, which screams the possibility of modularity. That would be amazing. So think VKB MCG Ultimate, right? You don't like a hat or an axis, boom, just undo the screws, swap it out, move it around, remove a button, add a hat. Much more to follow here, but this looks really, really cool. And then they also tease a new button box, which has a gear handle, a hook handle. The hook handle can be swapped out for a flight handle. It appears to have 3 toggle switches, 2 momentary buttons, 2 rotary encoders, an axis, and then most importantly, 12-digit keypad. So think like upfront controller. I don't know if this is kind of weird though. It is like a USC meets like a Winwing button box, with the gear and hook handle. So, and I don't really know where a traditional Simpit person might want to put something like this, because it kind of wants to be the best of both worlds, right? UFC maybe and a button box, but it, from a sheer functionality standpoint, it can't be beat. I mean, you could really just use those 12 keypads as like the F1 through F12 keys, DCS or something like that. But either way, very, very cool. Taking a look at it right now on the video version of the show. So what other photos we got? Oh yeah, the final edition on the Virpil side also is a new line of rudder pedals. They have what appears to be called Falcon pedals, with the pedals themselves being reminiscent of the TPR footrests. Now, I can't see much more in this photo. You can check it out for yourself, and that is because it was behind a panel of glass. There's a lot of reflections going on, but needless to say, new sticks, new bases, new button box, new rudder pedals, all coming from Virpil. So tons of stuff coming our way on the hardware front. And if you were interested in anything Virpil's got on hand right now and you're listening to this show today, Sunday, June 23rd, they are running a 10% off sale through midnight UTC time. So Tuesday, and that goes through Tuesday, June 25th. So to recap, a 10% off sale on all Virpil hardware through Tuesday, June 25th. The discount automatically applies, so no need for a coupon code. So thanks to Virpil for showing up. Well, thanks to all the hardware developers we've talked about for showing up. Your sheer presence has made this show so much better. We hope you keep coming back in the years to come. All right, this is on a more of a community update, but I did want to feature it here since it is hardware-related news. I've seen the first community member shared their review of the new Cadet VMAX throttle by Virpil. So thanks to Mike Romeo. This is just one community member's non-sponsored take on the throttle, but if you're someone who was interested in that lower price point throttle from Virpil, I think Mike does a really, really good job of highlighting his experience with the throttle so far, what he likes, what he doesn't. And he really dived into some issues I think tend to get glossed over in other reviews. So I wanted to shout him out for his effort here. I thought it was a very, very good review. He states his brief summary is overall he does like the throttle, but he did find a few flaws in it. So go check him out. That's at Mike_Romeo on YouTube, or just follow the video in the show notes. Okay, final two pieces of news on the hardware front. We'll burn through these real quick. The Next Level Racing expanded their Flight Seat Pro option. So if you were someone who was looking for kind of on the fence about the Next Level Racing gear or Next Level Racing flight sim setup, this is a military style chair with a cutout for your throttle, or sorry, your joystick base right between your legs. And it does have side mounted attachments for your throttle or side stick. All of this is kind of on a rollable cart with wheels. Traditionally, this has already been available in the standard black model, but for a limited time, they are releasing it in the Boeing Military Edition. So if you wanted that green look, military authentic vibe, I don't know how authentic I think that is. I prefer the sheepskin one. That was the one that was in my helicopter. But if this is the vibe you want for your cockpit and you wanted this Next Level Racing gear, go check it out. It's $650 US, and that all other global prices are available on the show notes. You can check it out there if that's of interest to you. And I encourage you to do it quickly if that's interesting. I think I saw on their website that they don't have a ton of these in stock, and I don't know how long it'll last. So that's Next Level Racing's Boeing Military Edition Flight Seat Pro. And then finally, on the hardware front, SimHatpics released support for their haptic feedback software. I should say this is a software hardware update, if you will, but it is applicable to hardware, so you got to have the butt kicker. So if you're interested in haptic feedback, the team at SimHaptic have updated their software, expanded native game support to now include DCS. So they've added DCS support for base shakers. So their lineup now includes both DCS, X-Plane, and Microsoft Flight Simulator. It does not appear that they ever have intentions of supporting the Next Level Racing HF8 haptic gaming pad, unfortunately. And I wasn't sure about things like the Jet Seat or the Jet Pad if you have either of those, but I thought those of you with the base shaker might want to check this out. This is $30 over on their website, I believe RK Apps is where you can go check that out, and a video on their YouTube page. And I also included a couple pictures of what some of these settings look like, right? It's very reminiscent of other software where you can go dial in how prominent of a vibration or effect do you want for like the parking brake or thrust or weapon release, things like that. So that is the final hardware update. And man, we've had a ton of news so far, but we're not going to forget about the most fun stuff, and that's the news that comes from folks like you. So let's transition to the portion of the show where we highlight your work, and that's the work from the community.
Really not track it, what they're doing exactly.
Community news is where we cover the latest goings on, from the community, from campaigns and mods to servers, software, and everything in between. We're going to get things kicked off this week with one of my favorite content creators, and that's MS Boy over on YouTube. He is back with a wonderful tutorial on how to design 3D printable cockpit panels. And I know this is something I've highlighted before, but I thought MS Boy does a very, very good job of highlighting something that I think gets glossed over for those of us who maybe don't have a lot of experience in 3D design. And that's, how do I actually do the very basic stuffs, well, how do I do all this stuff, right? But in Fusion 360, how do I do things like where specifically do I need to click to do exactly what you're doing? Some of these creators go way too quickly and just start cutting holes and drawing lines. And if you're like me and your experience is Tinkercad, you get a little overwhelmed. So he walks you through all the basics of how to design a replica F15E panel that you could 3D print for your use at home. And he does it all starting with just a screenshot of the panel that's not even to scale. So he's going to tell you, how would you scale it? How would you get it sized up? How would you build the panel vertically? How would you cut out all the holes for all the switches? And where do we go from there? Now, this is just part 1 in his series. So subscribe to his channel, give him a like, a comment, let him know that you really enjoy his content, and then stick around for the other parts where he'll flesh out the development of this. It's really, really cool. I can't wait to see what else he has in store. Again, that's MS Boy. His YouTube page is msboy1218. I already mentioned Scramble Battle of Britain earlier in the show, but I did want to give a shout out to some community members who also featured it this week, and that's Red Kite and Dr. Jeebus. So if you're curious about what I've been talking about, you haven't checked out the demo, you didn't see the presentation by John at the Flight Sim Expo, or you just want to hear what some content creators have to say, go ahead and check out what Red Kite and Dr. Jeebus have. They got some nice playthroughs over on their YouTube pages where you can walk through what the game looks like in action. I got some of these showing on the show notes right now. And they're great content creators to follow anyway, but I really enjoyed hearing what they both thought of the game and seeing if they're a lot better at it than I am, which it turns out they are. So, but something to enjoy over there. And again, as I mentioned up front, the Steam demo is still available post Steam Next Fest, and I don't think they have any plans to take it down, so go check that out and play it yourself. And then on the World War II front, I did mention this earlier in the show. This is just circling back. The TA-152 collector plane from IL-2, Stormbirds posted up his general impressions over on his website, stormbirds.blog. The main takeaway he had on this post was, if you are someone that really likes the Focke-Wulf 190, then you're going to probably enjoy this one as well. If not, then you might find this, you're probably not going to find this more enjoyable than any one of those other aircraft. So keep that in mind, but he's going to have some more write-ups in the future once he's got a little bit more hands-on time with that. Okay, Falcon BMS side of the house. Yeah, we haven't had any BMS news, so this was fun to find this week and to share with you. This is another shout out to Giller67. He was on last week's episode with a really cool manual tool, how to find features and functionality, the documentation. This is a tool all about navigation. So it's called BMS Nav, and he's highlighting this tool, which is a companion app for the Falcon BMS that displays kneeboards, briefings, various navigation aids, all on your mobile device. This was built primarily to act as a sort of physical kneeboard, removing the need to have the pilot model in game, so you could just flip through the in-game kneeboards on your physical kneeboard. So that's kind of the basic premise behind this. So this runs on iOS or Android. Essentially just uses a very small server on your PC to run and send the files from BMS to your tablet. So really nice and easy. Got a couple pictures of what it looks like in action. Haven't checked this out myself yet, but I'm a huge fan of alternatives, especially when it comes to in-game kneeboards, because I don't like the pilot model in-game. Just gets in the way. I kind of like to remove that, but you do lose the kneeboard. So that's where something like this can be very, very valuable. So cool addition. Thank you so much, Giller67. That is called BMS Nav. All right. One of the bigger pieces of DCS news this week was on the DCS multiplayer front, and that's Enigma. Enigma of Enigma's Cold War, the legendary, quote unquote, if you will, developer of that server. And that's just because the server has had immense success since it got started. So he's really, in some ways, and at least from a multiplayer perspective, I think, has generated a ton of buzz around the Cold War scene. And the folks up there have done tremendous work. Well, he has decided to step down from running the Enigma Cold War server. But Heapler has stepped up. That's right. Heapler will be taking over the management of Enigma's Cold War server starting July 1st. Enigma put together a whole video on his YouTube page where he talked about the history of the server and discussed all the time required to run it and where he plans to go moving forward. You can find that on his YouTube page at Enigma89. And he does have a lot of great flights and content in general, some really good interviews. So check that out. But this video in particular, at the end of the video, he does mention, like I said, that Heapler will be taking over. And then on their Discord, Iron Mike from Heapler went on to say that we are very proud to assume this responsibility. They thank Enigma and the team, but they go on to point out that this is an important server to preserve. So they do mention that they will not be taking over and completely changing things. Their goal will be to preserve it as is. And they say that that's because no one should ever change a winning team. So the decisions will be made by towards keeping that goal in mind of preserving where it is. The server will not be a heap or promotion server, so there's not going to be any favoritism of heap or modules or weapons. They said all modules will continue to get the same consideration, whether benefiting the server mission environment or not, as before, including their own modules. So essentially, if you're someone who's liked the Enigma Cold War server, it sounds like it's going to be status quo in that regard. It's just Enigma won't be at the top of the operation anymore. So, and then the final big news is there will be no need for donations anymore. So Heapware is going to pick up all the costs and offer this as a free service to the community. So I just want to kind of put this news in here to thank Enigma for his work for the community, thank the team over there for all the work they've done, and to thank Heapware for stepping up. I think this is really, really cool. Man, they've just been leaning so much into the community as of late. It's really, really impressive. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what a developer does as the owner of a multiplayer server. Does that mean anything in terms of the game? Or can they give feedback to Eagle Dynamics on what could be improved, what things they'd like to see added? I mean, I know Eagle Dynamics has their own servers, but this will be just, a very unique addition to the game in that sense. I don't know if we've ever had a third-party developer own the server before. So anyway, on the DTS multiplayer front, I did want to highlight a new multiplayer server aimed at Helo Bubbas. So if you like to fly DCS helicopters, check out the Black Shark Den multiplayer server. They call it Helo World 2.0. So I got links to the forum post and their Discord. They said this is, and I featured this because it's a really timely point in DCS's development to have a multiplayer server focused on helos, right? With the Kiowa that just came out, with the CH-47 about to release, with the Afghanistan map, which will be really suited, I would think, to helo ops. This sounds like a really great place. So on the server list in DCS, you're looking up Helo World by BSD or Black Shark Den. It currently runs on the Syria map. And the server, as I mentioned, is maintained by the Black Shark Den Squadron. They say, quote, "We value the roles of all the DCS helicopters and give them meaningful tasks that will influence the outcomes of the battle." So they founded on 3 principles: fixed wing free, so only helicopters here. There's no player versus player, so this is PvE, and hence because of that, all missions are cooperative in nature. So you can expect to perform tasks such as close air support with troops in contact, capturing areas while fighting against the AI, FARP activation, so you can expect to see the MI8, the Huey, the UH-60 mod, all these logistic operations going on, oil rig assaults, VBSS, anti-submarine air warfare, shout out sub warfare, love it, ASW baby, and then coin operations, so counterinsurgency. Now that last one's a work in progress, but I got a video to the action that you can expect to see on the DCS Helo World server from the fine folks over here at Black Shark Den, and then more of what you can expect. So check them out, as the name would suggest, on their YouTube page. It's at Black Shark Den, and again, that's Helo World. Okay, next up on the DCS community news front, we got Bogey Dope. So the content creator Bogey Dope, he previewed the F-16 Gamblers campaign. And this is one of the pieces of news I forgot to mention. That is also something we can expect in the mega patch coming to DCS. We've talked about it on previous shows, but that campaign is a DCS F-16 campaign by Baltic Dragon. It's scheduled for release now. I guess we mentioned on the 3rd of July. This will be on the Syria map. Well, Bogey Dope has a great playthrough of what you can expect if you pick up that campaign. So I always recommend Baltic Dragon campaigns, but he's got one. I'd say Bogey Dope's got a nice video. If you're on the fence about what you can expect, you can check it out over on his webpage or YouTube page, excuse me. So about 42 minutes of DCS action from Mission 1. And then finally on the community news front, last week I discussed the Stream Deck connector from HCS Voice Pack, and I mentioned this was a thing, a piece of software I should say, you could buy that would allow you to have button functionality on your Elgato Steam Deck that would activate a voice attack command. Well, over on Bailey's Discord, I posted this news to share it. I thought that audience would be interested, and lo and behold, community member Pascoal, Pascoal, shout out to you if you're listening. They were kind enough to make it known that you can already do this with your Elgato Steam Deck for free. Or sorry, Stream Deck, Elgato Stream Deck. I think I said Steam Deck. Not to confuse the two. You can already do this on your Stream Deck just using a simple plugin called the Advanced Launcher by BarRaider. So use the command argument. So example, dash command, and then you just type the name of your voice attack command, like drop blue smoke, and boom, it works right out of the box. You direct that comment or the command to use your voice attack executable, and away you go. So free plugin, you can replicate the software of that $18 piece of software without having to spend a single dime. So sorry to the folks at HCS Voice Packs. I don't know if this is exactly what they're doing, and they are making it slightly easier for you. But if you just like the sound of free, and who doesn't, go ahead and check this plugin out, and you can do that yourself. So again, that is a nice little free plugin option for your Stream Deck with voice attack integration. Okay, that wraps things up on the community news side of the house. Let's shift over and finally highlight the user content of the week.
They blew themselves up. They just blew themselves up.
So the user content of the week, sometimes it's a mission, sometimes it's a tutorial, sometimes it's just an interesting topic of conversation here in the content of the week. And this week, we're blessed by Stan the Man from Combined Joint Task Force, or CGTF, which is a refresher course covering the OH-58 Kiowa. Or Kiowa, excuse me. Gosh, every week it's going to be a problem, folks. Kiowa. So you might be asking, how the heck can I get a refresher course? It's only been out like 2 weeks. Well, this is a YouTube series he's had going back quite a while, and it sounds like these are intended mainly for his fellow squadron mates, but this is basically a series of videos that, just as the name implies, refresher course. It's designed to get you back into a module if you've been away flying other modules or real life's kept you busy. These refresher courses are basically get you in the cockpit, cover everything you need to remember from startup to all functionality as quickly as possible so that you are semi-functional, right? So this is not a beginner course because you're moving pretty quickly. It's a refresher course. So the quote is, all lessons are not in-depth tutorials, but rather a fairly fast-paced review of systems and procedures. So in about 45 minutes, you're going to get everything from starting up to radios and navigation to covering all the weapons and employments, all that stuff. And I think one of the coolest features is he's got this cool flyby so the aircraft's already on the tarmac. And for some of the other videos he's got, you fly by all the existing aircraft, I think, in that squadron's inventory before focusing on the aircraft you're going to fly that day. So he does, as I mentioned, or I'm alluding to, he has refresher or supplemental lesson videos for the A-10C, the A-10C2, the Apache, the Vigan, the Harrier, the F-18, the Gazelle, the Huey, and the F-14B Rio. Now, some of these are quite old, so I can't attest to the validity of how functional they still are, particularly in regards to the Huey and the A-10C, but imagine for some of those not enough's changed, they're probably still really, really valuable. So again, that's the DCS Refresher Course video series from Stan the Man. You can find him over on his YouTube page at CJTF Stan the THA Man. So CJTF Stan the Man. Thank you so much, Stan the Man. This is a great series, and I know I will definitely be making use of this in the weeks and months to come. So great stuff. All right, that wraps it up for the user content and community news. Let's shift it over to the Simpit Spotlight.
You don't see any big stream of flames or smoke coming out there.
The Simpit Spotlight is my favorite segment of the show, and here is where we highlight a community member's personal Simpit setup, no matter how simple or complex, to celebrate the joy of flying from home. And this week, we got multiple Simpits. That's right. I found a video to end all videos for Simpits, and that's because the content creator Rossi Gee, ROSSY_GEE, put together a behind the scenes of his DCS rig. So he shows off what he's put together in this great video, and then also showed off videos from his friends who sent in submissions to their Simpits, and he appends those to the end of the video. So you don't have one, you don't have two, but you have 8? I could count. I think 8 different Simpits from which to look at and learn from. So steal ideas, praise what you like, move on from what you don't, but then grab all these ideas and put them into your Simpits. So you can find this video over on his YouTube page. Again, I mentioned it's at Rossi_GEE, Rossi Gee. Or even better, if you maybe want to interact with some of those other folks who sent in their Simpits, you can find that over on the Discord page, and I've linked that in the show notes for you to learn a little bit more. So that is the Simpit Spotlight. Enjoy multiple Simpits with Rossi Gee and friends. All right, now it's time for the listener feedback portion of the show.
612, departure radio check.
Now, you've heard me talking a lot about what I found this week, but if you think there are some news, community content, or even a Simpit setup that you would like to see covered on the show, please let me know. I always appreciate people getting out, letting me know about the content that's out there that should highlight on the show. And in particular, thanks to MS Boy. He reached out to me this week. I really appreciated your email, sir. For all you others out there who are on the fence, just please get in contact. You can always write me via email, feedback@thehangarbaypod.com, or via social media. You can find me on Twitter or on Instagram at @thehangarbaypod. As I always say, help me shine a light on the great things going on in the community, and I'll even remind you one more time in the outro. You'll hear it again there too. So that said, that concludes another episode of The Hangar Bay. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you all made it. Man, we had a ton to cover, didn't we? But it's such a good time. It's the golden age of flight simulation hardware. I continue to say that, and it's great to see the developers coming with a lot of news. Who would have expected this last week in June? We've got so much to be excited for, so much to look forward to. That said, we'll be back next weekend, as we always do around here, to get you squared away with the latest military flight simulation and hardware news. But until then, think about what you put out into the community and make it a better place. Fly safe, everyone.
Right here. Let's go down low on the deck. Unload 500 knots. Let's get out of here.
The missile knows where it is at all times. Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is that you can find the video show on YouTube or on Spotify at the Hangar Bay Pod. The audio show is available on all major podcast providers. You can contact the show via email, feedback@thehangarbaypod.com, or on Instagram and Twitter at thehangarbaypod. Show notes and links to everything discussed on this week's show are available at thehangarbaypod.com.
It takes a lot more than just fancy flying.